I now call to order the meeting of the directors of the Queens West Development Corporation for Monday, March 30th, 2015. The directors have received the written materials in advance of this meeting, and they are free to ask questions at any time. Please note that the public is free to ask questions and comment on items on the agenda within the time limits specified on the agenda posted to the internet. Before we begin with the substantive portion of the meeting, I would like to ask the directors whether anyone has a potential conflict of interest with respect to any of the items on the agenda. If so, I would like to ask you... Sorry?
No.
Okay, no? Good. If so, I would like to ask you to make an appropriate disclosure on the record at this time. We will be sure that you excuse yourself from any discussion or vote with regard to such item or items. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any concerns about conflicts, so I will now ask for a motion to approve the minutes from the March 27th, 2014 Directors Meeting.
Before I do that, I'd just like to introduce John Ma. We have now 2 board members from the Port Authority. John's Chief of Staff or Executive Director Pat Foy. So this is John's first meeting. So I want to welcome him to the Queens West organization.
Great, welcome, John.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe.
Thanks for joining us today.
I will move also the adoption of the minutes from the previous, I guess, annual meeting.
Great. Have a second?
Yes. Second.
Yeah, you're...
All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. So, thank you. I am now going to ask Alexis Offen, our president at the Queens West Development Corporation, to present the fiscal year 2015-2016 budget for consideration by directors.
Okay, thank you. The materials are included in the proposed operating budget and capital expense authorization for next year. The capital expense authorization for 2015-2016 is approximately $6 million, which includes the following commitments. Approximately $5 million committed to the Queens Library project, which includes the library itself, the completion of the 47th Road entrance, and the ranger station, all on Parcel 8. Approximately $650,000 in remaining open contracts, and approximately $1 million in remaining contingency. In reviewing the capital expense authorization, you may have noted that construction costs on this budget are several times higher than in the previous year, and miscellaneous costs have been reduced to a zero balance. That just reflects adjustment in line item accounting for us. We moved the items that had been in miscellaneous costs, which were the 3 library components, into construction costs to provide greater clarity to the directors and also to assist auditors in reviewing our books to make clear what the project is and where it's accounted for. Operational expenses are advanced through ESD corporate funds and reimbursed through the developer's Brownfield program tax credit entitlements and from site remediation contributions. Operational expenses are expected to be approximately $120,000 for the coming year, with a reduction from past years. The reduction reflects a decrease in staff headcount and salary that we've allocated to the Queens West project. I'm happy to take any questions on the budget.
I would like to, I think this is consistent with previous requests from us. I would like to reduce the project-wide contingency to a number approaching probably about a 15, even I'd go for a 20% number, and that should be focused basically on line item number 1, the 47th Street road work, and number 3, the 47th Street Road Park Ranger Station, which I guess combined is about $950 million. Instead, I think the $3.5 million is a commitment. It's not necessarily a construction cost, so there should really be no contingency factor associated with that. So I just prefer to basically have a project-wide contingency of anywhere, if you're looking at, 15%, it would be $150,000 to 20%, $200,000, as opposed to earmarking every last cent we have within the fund to contingency or construction.
Alexis? Sorry, we had a little bit of a phone challenge there. So what I heard was a suggestion that we make the contingency kind of more in line with the capital construction budget.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond those two items that were mentioned, are there other potential items that would fall into the capital construction budget?
No, I mean, the contingency reflects more than just the three library items, right? I mean, it's an overall number. We can reduce it accordingly for the number that's based on the library. I mean, I don't know how the 15 to 20% was arrived at as a number that would be the appropriate. Is that what the library accounts for in the total budget? Is that where you went with that?
No, usually the Port Authority holds a contingency, quite frankly, of anywhere from 20% in very early construction planning phases to as little as a 7% when the project is somewhat better defined. So I'm giving this project the benefit of the doubt and saying 15%. So I would recommend that the project-wide contingency should be $150,000. Which I think is more than sufficient for the $950,000 estimate for items 1 and 3, the site work and the ranger station.
Mark, if I may just respond to that. The only issue that's really truly contingent here is the ongoing brownfields remediation monitoring work. As you know, we've finished all of our brownfields work and
Right.
and got certificates of completion, but the groundwater monitoring continues, and that will continue that'll go for at least another few years. DEC has approved reduction in monitoring wells, a substantial reduction in monitoring wells so far, but it's hard to anticipate exactly how much that's going to cost. So that I don't disagree with you that the project-wide contingency could be reduced, but we need to make sure that there's enough on hand to cover that.
Are you referring to the $486,000 line item in the Avalon Bay communities?
No, that the Avalon Bay part of the brownfields work is only a part of the brownfields reporting, groundwater sampling reporting for the entire site.
Sure. Okay, well,
Covers,
that's only
Parcel 8, Parcel 9, and Center Boulevard. But there's all the rest of the streets and operating units 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the northern part of Queens West.
All right, so you're referring to the Flemington Lee Shoe line item then?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so you have $84,000 in capital. I mean, I think the 150 overall contingency should cover that as well as the...
Well, no, now you're mixing up a few things. I think you've got the two construction items plus the Flemington Shoe line.
Right.
And the other thing I would say is Empire ESD generally carries a contingency of 20% and not 15%. So, as it relates to the specific construction items, we'd feel more comfortable with 20%.
Okay.
But Simon,
We'll
as it relates to the Flemington Shoe and kind of environmental remediation contingency, what would you suggest?
I mean, one hates to slice the slice it in half, but perhaps a 17.5% contingency would be reasonable. I mean, we could certainly reduce it. There's no question. We just got groundwater monitoring reports in today, and they continue to be very positive. So no one's anticipating any major or even minor extra remediation work. So I think it's fair to say that we could reduce it.
All right, so to move this forward, it's a relatively modest issue. So I'll raise a contingency line item from 150 to 200, which should be more than adequate to pay for the 20% and even a few bucks extra for the Flemington shoe.
A little tight.
Look, I guess the bottom line is, if it turns out that that's too tight and that we need more funds, we'll have a board meeting and arrange for it to be funded.
Correct.
But it won't be budgeted,
Right.
so we'll expend, okay,
That's fine.
okay, that's fine.
Okay, so just to be clear, the motion is to adopt the budget, but with an amendment to bring the contingency down to 20%.
$200,000.
The $200,000.
I'm sorry, to $200,000.
Right.
So it reduces it by about 800, Alexis?
Yeah, a little more than 800.
Okay.
It's proportional to that.
And
Right.
Alexis, what happens with the $800,000 then?
870.
What happens with that? I look to you. Do we know? Contingency. Where are the funds held?
Well, let's go back to the
Right
port.
now? Okay.
Well, in theory, it would be held until the project's closed
Right,
and then
that's what I
returned
was
to the
thinking.
port.
Right, in
Go
due
back,
course
yeah.
they go back to the port.
Right.
In due course.
Right, they
But it would
continue to
require
remain
us
here.
to in here, but if we ever need to tap into them, we would come to the
Magic
board
question.
rather than
Right.
have discretion.
Correct, that's
Yeah.
the thing, it tightens it.
Okay. So Simon, do we need to make a motion to amend the budget to allow for the contingency to be dropped to $200,000?
Yeah, I think it's appropriate.
Okay.
Adopt the budget with that.
Guys,
I'll move that, such a motion to amend the budget so that the project-wide contingency line item is now $200,000.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any questions on the operating budget? Guys? I think they froze.
They're gone.
They're having problems with a firewall.
What? Who's handling it?
It's the court's new systems.
Ah,
It might do that every 15 minutes. We just found out there's a timer or something. So.
Okay. Sorry, we lost the
Okay.
connection.
That may happen again in 15 minutes, so let's hurry up.
well, that's an incentive.
All right, so, any questions on the operating budget?
No, I don't have any.
No.
Okay, motion to approve the operating budget?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Alexis, do you want to move on to the president's report?
Doing the procurement guidelines?
Okay. Oh,
Am I right? Is that
okay. Oh, I apologize. I skipped a page and the disruption on the phone. So I will now ask Simon Nguyen to present an item related to the approval of revised procurement guidelines for the corporation. Simon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under Section 2879A of the Public Authorities Law, ESD and its subsidiaries, including Queens West Development Corporation, are required to adopt procurement guidelines every year, and they must be in place by the time of the close of the fiscal year. I'm happy to report that in the last fiscal year, there were very few changes to relevant procurement laws and regulations, and so the procurement guidelines, which are identical to those adopted on March 19th by the ESD board, are presented to you in virtually the same form as they appeared at this time last year. There have been some changes to make the procurement guidelines more user-friendly, and also to speed up some of the procedures that are used. So there are no substantive changes, but there are a few procedural changes. That said, and in line with the budget that Alexis just presented, for Queens West, we don't really anticipate much in the way of procurements at all in the coming year. This is really a housekeeping item to ensure that we are in compliance with the Public Authorities Law. I'm happy to answer any questions about the guidelines. We should always look at the Port Authority's guidelines when we're working on this, and so you'll probably see some things in the guidelines that you recognize.
Thank you, Simon. Any questions or comments from the directors? Any comments from the public? If not, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move.
Okay, got it?
So move.
Okay. Second?
Second.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you, Simon. Alexis will now provide the President's report for your information. No vote is required for this item.
Thank God.
Okay. I'd like to take a few minutes to update you on the work that's underway at Queens West and the progress we've made since last March's President's report. As you know, Queens West is entering a new chapter in its history as we wrap up many of the important projects, and we undertake one last development at the site. Let's begin with the residential. The final residential building, located at Parcel 3, is now complete and fully rented. Queens West has now a total of 11 residential buildings and provides over 4,600 units of housing. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we're having some IT issues. So again, we've developed all 11 residential parcels and provide 4,600 units of housing. The final development parcel is the future library on Parcel 8. As you know, the New York City Department of Design and Construction will be constructing the Stephen Hull designed library on behalf of Queens Library. QUIDIC and the Port Authority have pledged to contribute funds towards the library's construction, and QUIDIC will also contribute to the completion of the 47th Road entrance at this location and construction of a park ranger and comfort station. The start of the construction of the library was delayed when the city undertook additional value engineering and decided to rebid the project. I'm very pleased to report that there's new momentum from DDC and a new board at the Queens Library, and construction began just this month. It's expected to take 24 months for completion. There will be a groundbreaking ceremony in May at which the community will gather, and it will be a positive amenity for residents and visitors alike. We will continue to monitor the progress and update you accordingly. Regarding the park construction, as you may recall, we undertook a number of repairs to park elements in response to damage from Hurricane Sandy. All repairs are complete. We continue to work with FEMA on reimbursement for this work. In June, we received approximately $25,000 from FEMA, and we anticipate the receipt of the final $225,000 in reimbursements soon. Those final reimbursements will cover repair to damaged lighting and the children's spray park. Since our last meeting, Quiddick has tendered title to all 6.5 acres of Gantry State Park. The state's Parks Department is in the process of recording those deeds, and we expect to complete the transfer of all the remaining 6.5 acres in the coming months. For the transfer of the streets and the utilities, we'll note that we have obtained New York City DOT approval for all repairs to the street lighting and are now in conversations with DOT to begin the transfer of the streets to their jurisdiction. We are also working with New York City DEP to obtain the letter of acceptance for the final punch items, which I expect to be resolved within a matter of weeks. The finances we've discussed in the budget summary, but to review here, we have a project-wide contingency balance that was $1.15 million, and which the board today has voted on to amend. The contingency that was spent over the past year, that balance was spent for repairs of the lamppost, the electrical system, and crosswalk pavers. The remaining contingency balance would be used for any unforeseen additional repairs and construction needs, and of course, we would come to the board with anything over that new amount. Queens West and TF Cornerstone, the developer funding the infrastructure fund, have agreed to provide $1.4 million for the design and construction of the dog run and community garden in the state park space on Center Boulevard from the infrastructure fund. Construction is expected to begin this spring and to wrap up by the end of the summer. Queens West and TF Cornerstone also agreed to provide $155,000 from the TF Cornerstone funded fund to support infrastructure improvements in Gantry State Park. I'll conclude with noting that Queens West continues to flourish and the library is underway, and the final transfer of the streets, parks, and utilities are well underway and expected for this year. I look forward to providing you with future updates, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Hey, Alexis, it's John.
Questions from the board?
Alexis, on the Sandy repairs, what was the local match component, or was FEMA reimbursing the entire amount of the damages?
It's a good question. I'll have to look to my colleagues who were involved with the project at the time. Do any of you know if there was a local match?
I don't recall it.
Okay, we don't recall it, but I can certainly look into that from previous years.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And Alexis, you can report back to the board
Absolutely.
by email.
Yeah.
Other questions? Okay, there being no further business, and given the 15-minute increment that we're trying to work under, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you everyone for your participation in the meeting.